Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
And tonight on the Rita Cosby Show, boy, there is a lot of news breaking. President Trump putting out a post on Truth Social a little bit ago saying that he wanted to be at his own son's wedding, Donald Trump Jr. That would have been tomorrow. But he said because of his love for the United States, he will not be allowed to do so. Then he further says it's important for him to remain in Washington, D.C. at the White House during this important period of time. So he is foregoing his own son's wedding and heading back to Washington after a big day in New York at a big rally. And then there is some other big breaking news that has just come in. Let's do a little bit of a breaking news on this one, too, as well.
Breaking news.
And this just in, that Ivanka Trump was targeted for assassination by a terrorist tied to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps in a bizarre twist in an avenge move to get back at the president, because the president had taken out Qasem Soleimani, as we know, who was head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps a number of years ago. Remember, that was a very successful strike that President Trump did in his first term. And now we're getting word that that new guy who had been arrested recently, Mohammed al-Saidi, who was arrested for plots throughout the United States and also overseas as well with a pretty big network, apparently made a pledge to kill Ivanka. And he even had a blueprint of her Florida home. This is according to the New York Post. This is really frightening. And it just shows the unbelievable threats that the Trump family has and the ties to Qasem Soleimani and the threats, of course, coming from Iran, that they will never give up, that they have always and will always be this regime supporting terror throughout the globe. And this guy was well funded. He had a big network of co-conspirators. And the fact that this guy who was just captured recently, thank goodness, that he was planning and plotting to kill Ivanka as payback to what her father did by killing the ruthless Iranian military chief, Qasem Soleimani. So this is really frightening because a number of the other attacks that were tied to this guy, some of them were carried out, remember, in London and in France and elsewhere. And they were apparently plotting to go after a synagogue in New York. They were plotting also Jewish sites in Los Angeles and also one in Scottsdale, Arizona. So this is very chilling and very real. And this is why these security measures that are up against the Trump family that they deal with every single day, needless to say, the threats against their father are massive. And now this could not come at a more pivotal time, this information coming to the New York Post, because, of course, as we're hearing, President Trump rush back to the White House and is going to be meeting with a lot of his national security team. So the question is, will there be some sort of imminent action potentially against Iran or something else for him to forego his own son's wedding? So that is a very big deal. What do you think is ahead, guys? 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. And you are listening to the Rita Cosby Show on what is a very busy news night. And I can just tell you, the last time that President Trump rerouted, remember his schedule, that's when some of the strikes were happening. So when you see him suddenly rerouting his schedule, he had planned to go to Bedminster after a very successful rally in New York. And instead, he put out a statement late today saying, instead, as you heard, for the love of America, I am going back to the White House. And that's where I'm going to be this weekend. So this could be a very pivotal moment, depending what happens if the action is tied to Iran or Cuba or a variety of things. Of course, I'm foremost thinking about Iran. We shall see, because so far we have heard that Iran has not come back with anything that is satisfactory, nothing tied to giving up their nuclear material. And in fact, we've even heard the opposite, that the Supreme Leader put out a statement a few hours ago saying, we want to keep the nuclear material. Well, guess what? That is a red line. That's a non-starter with President Trump and also with the free world, because obviously it is pivotal that that nuclear material gets out of Iranian hands and never becomes a nuclear weapon. So what do you think is going to happen next, guys? And what do you think should happen next? 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. President Trump today also talked about this crazy New York sanctuary state law that just went into effect. We talked about it yesterday when it broke. And now more details are coming out about it, where they can't go in public places. It's to block ICE and to block local law enforcement from helping in any shape or form with ICE. To me, that's unconstitutional. Many constitutional scholars absolutely believe it's unconstitutional. We talked to John Yoo earlier today, and he says this is not obviously in line with the Constitution, that the federal law should reign supreme, and that you can't suddenly say, I'm not going to cooperate with federal agents. And that's exactly what this new New York state law does. It is sweeping, and it is one of the biggest anti-ICE laws in the country. And also, there are more now Democratic candidates that get wackier and wackier. There are a whole bunch of different ones that have just come out that are even more extreme than the other ones, if that's possible. There's a leading Democrat in the state of Wisconsin in the governor's race that not just wants to rein in law enforcement, she wants to defund police. She wants to abolish them. She literally put out in a statement not that long ago that defunding the police is a first step towards abolishing police. And this person is running for public office. It comes as you got Graham Plattner, who has said the most horrific things, that guy in Maine. And then you got this guy, Charles Robb, in Pennsylvania, who very much seems anti-police, clearly anti-Israel. I mean, the list goes on and on. What is going on with the Democratic Party that there's so many anti-Semitic people? It's downright frightening. Well, meantime, as I mentioned, President Trump today had a very, very successful rally in New York. He was in Rockland County, of course, the base of Mike Lawler, Congressman Mike Lawler, who's a great congressman from there. Also, Bruce Blakeman, who was running for governor, was also there and spoke at that rally. Also, Ed Cox, part of the Qasem Cosby team, and of course, New York State GOP chairman. He was there. We're going to hear a little bit of his comments. Also, our own Sid Rosenberg went too and had a great sort of spontaneous meeting with the president. We'll share some details on that because it was terrific. But first, here is President Trump. And you know how much he loves New York. He's a Queens guy. And so today he said, you know what? New York is definitely getting famous for the exodus, thanks to Zoran Mondani and Governor Kathy Hochul, that they are driving people out of the Empire State. Here's President Trump just a little bit ago in his home state of New York.
New York can never be the same if it's losing its tax base, and the people that pay 85% of the taxes are leaving. And we're taking in illegal immigrants. Oh, they're wonderful people and all, but they're not paying any tax. They're taking your money. Ay, ay, ay. They're taking your money. The people that pay 85 to 90% of your taxes are leaving. And you know, when they go, they never come back. They never come back. Nobody calls them. Nobody does anything. Nobody talks to them. Nobody says, please don't leave. We'll give you a tax rebate. We'll do anything. Don't leave. but they're leaving. They're going to Florida. They're going to Tennessee. They're going to Texas. They're going to South Carolina, North Carolina. They're going all over the place, but they're leaving, and we can't let it happen. It's a great place. We can't. Bruce will stop it. Mike will stop it. They're all going to stop it. They'll bring them back.
And then in classic Trump, by the way, he went on and on and on. No teleprompter. There he was. I think it was over an hour. I mean, it was really remarkable. This wasn't some little, short, little disconnected speech. He was definitely in line with New York values, New York messaging, was waving to people in the crowd, engaging. I mean, it was really extraordinary and really remarkable, full of energy and fire. And he also went after the Democrats and talked about Hakeem Jeffries. He's the House Minority Leader and also from New York. And he says, that's where I got the new name Democrats, because I was thinking, he says, of Hakeem Jeffries.
Blue means Democrat. That's a new name I came up with. You've never heard. I was thinking about this character we have in the House. His name is Hakeem Jeffries. And he's a low IQ person, very low IQ. And I watched what he was saying and what the horrible things he was saying, and I said, he's a dumb guy. I said, wait a minute, he's a Democrat. That's how I got the name. You take the E out, you don't use the B. A lot of people don't know dumb has a B in it, actually. You don't need it. You discard the B. But you take the E out and you replace it with a U. They're dumb. They are Democrats. You know why? Because their policies are dumb. Their policies are very dumb.
And he also talked about the Save America Act, voter ID.
And all voters must show voter ID. All voters must provide proof of citizenship. And there will be no more mail-in ballot scams, especially in places just like this where it's so rampant.
And of course, as I mentioned, President Trump also big time talked about Iran. And as I said, he has rushed back to the White House. So you can read that however you wish, but it sounds like something is brewing. Here's President Trump.
With Operation Epic Fury, our warriors are ensuring that the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, Iran, #1 state sponsor of terror, they send their money all over the world to create problems, never going to happen, and they're never going to have a nuclear weapon, and they know that. They know that.
And earlier, we talked to K.T. McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. And right when the news broke, this is how she interprets President Trump's message on Truth Social about what kind of a weekend may be ahead.
I think they're in the middle of making a very serious decision of the next couple of days. Now, having watched President Trump and worked for him and seen him every day in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room, he negotiates very differently from most leaders. Most leaders will say, well, we're having a negotiation, so we're going to stop our military pressure. We're going to ease up on the sanctions. So they kind of reward whoever they're negotiating with just for the fact that they're negotiating. Trump doesn't. He leaves the pressure on while they're negotiating. So the sanctions are left on, the blockade is left on while Iran is negotiating. And it's pretty clear we've now seen that two leaders of two countries, Pakistan and Qatar, are rushing to Iran to try to see if there's some way they can have some kind of a deal that's acceptable to President Trump. Otherwise, I think President Trump's going to use military action within the next 2 days. I mean, if he's saying he's not going to his son's wedding, that means he's going to be in the White House Situation Room.
That's how I read it, too. As soon as I read that, I thought, boy, it's going to be a busy weekend. 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Sandra real quick in New York on line 2. Sandra, go ahead.
Well, they arrested a really bad guy, Al Sadi or Sadie.
Yep.
He was going to try to go after Ivanka Trump. I can't get over this. And, he did a lot of bad stuff in Europe, and they got him. So that's kind of good.
Yeah, the good news is they got him. You know, the scary thing is, Sandra, there were a whole bunch apparently of co-conspirators with this guy. And it sounds like Turkey cooperated. Remember when they brought him over? So that's good. That's the great news. The scary thing is apparently he was working with a group of guys, and I think they got one co-conspirator, or at least they had the name of the co-conspirator, but it seems like there were quite a bit of them. And this guy was like a commander of this group that was tied to Hezbollah and also the IRGC, which are both obviously directly tied to Iran. So, and there were actions that have already taken place, like this attack in London, which already happened, where he inspired this person. So it sounds like he's directing a lot of people, and it makes you wonder who else is out there and what other plots were on the horizon, right? This is chilling.
Yeah. It's so concerning. I feel so worried about everyone, and it's getting worse and worse instead of better and better. I don't know, Rita.
Well, the world's a dangerous place, Sandra, and that's why, I have such respect for President Trump and his family, because President Trump knew by taking out Soleimani that it was a good move for the world and for, the war on terror. There's no doubt about it. He's the guy who had the guts to take that guy out, just like he's the guy who had the guts to go after the Iranian nuclear plants, and then just recently also the strikes. But there were always threats from the Iranians against the president, against almost any American president, but especially President Trump, even before this. And he knew that doing it would only increase it, but he was willing to do it because he understood how important it was for the world freedom. I mean, that is courageous, Sandra.
That's right. That's absolutely correct, Rita. You're right. So let's all pray and hope that nothing bad happens to all these good people, and all the bad ones get put in jail. And
or the bad ones, the really bad ones, end up in a pile of rubble. That would be actually a pretty good thing, Sandra. And who knows? Based on President Trump and his statement and the fact he's going back to Washington at this time, and so far we haven't heard of a deal from the Iranians. There might be more rubble very soon, especially for some of those IRGC leaders, and that wouldn't be a bad thing whatsoever if they take out a whole bunch of them. Sandra, thank you very, very much. 1-800-848-9222. And everybody, we will continue right after this on The Rita Cosby Show.